Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The Another View Roundtable is with us, and there's so much to talk about. 20 years ago, the Nation of Islam called for the Million Man March. But what's happened to black men since the march? On the political front, Speaker Boehner steps down, and then his presumed successor suddenly drops out of the race to replace him. Plus, Rupert Murdoch tweets, "What about a real black president?" Not to mention, locally, Mayor Fraim says, "I'm done," and Norfolk Public Schools say, "We've got a new leader." Whew! Hang on, there's more. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Isn't it wonderful to see the sunshine out there, especially after all the weather we've been having lately? And our hearts still go out to our brethren and sisterin out there in South Carolina. So we hope that they are doing well and that they will dry out soon. Now, before we get started with our roundtable, and we've got lots to talk about with them, do want to mention very quickly one of our partners in our Race Let's Talk About It initiative, Virginia College. All year long, they are holding their 1619 programs, and they are doing, it's called Entangled Identities, Legacies of 1619, exploring the impact of the arrival of the first African slaves in Virginia and its significance in American history. And they'll be doing programs all year long, but this coming Thursday, October the 15th, they have two programs happening, one from 11 to 11:50 a.m. called From Africa to America, Reconstructing the African American Musical Past. That's being held at the Fine Arts Building on Horkheimer Theater on campus. It is free and open to the public. And then that evening, the African American Spiritual, Symbol of Religious and Cultural Identity, also on the 15th of October at 7 p.m., also in the Fine Arts Building at the Horkheimer Theater on the campus of Virginia Wesleyan College. You can find out more at vwc.edu/1619. So check it out, and they will have programs all year long. Again, they are free and open to the public. So lots of fodder for our Another View pundits. So let's get going. Roger Chesley is a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot. You can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hi, Roger.
Hello, Barbara.
Welcome back. You were sick the last time. We missed you.
I was, and I heard some of the comments made about me in my absence. Bill, you will be dealt with. We're going to test some of your mathematics skills as well.
And, I love the round table. Y'all just love each other so much. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor at Norfolk State University, and she is now a blogger. Her blog is called Just Me, Notes from a Political Junkie, and you can find it at medium.com/@cpretlow. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Barbara, and everybody.
That's fantastic. So I've been checking out your blog, and so you're doing pretty well. We expect to hear lots of you as we talk about our political topics today.
Okay.
And then the main man everyone asks me about when we talk about the round table, when I'm out in the community, he is our community activist, Mr. Bill Thomas. How are you, Bill?
I'm good, Barbara. How are you?
I'm doing good. You all ready for Hampton University's homecoming this weekend? I understand.
I'm ready for the twerking and all the other stuff that goes on. Absolutely.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
After I saw that on the first episode of Empire, that lady in that white dress twerking, I cannot get that out of my mind. So if you can go back and look that up. Oh, my goodness.
Too much information.
Oh, my goodness.
And joining us by phone is the hardest working man in show business, journalist, author, professor, and talk show host, Wil LaVeist. Hi, Will. How are you?
Hey, Barbara. Always an honor to be on with you. I'm looking at you all online, and I had to turn down the tint on my computer screen, looking at Bill Thomas with that baby pot of blue lighting up my screen.
Well, and that reminds me to remind our audience that you can watch us do radio if you go to anotherviewradio.org during the hour. We actually stream the show live. So if you'd like to see how good looking Bill Thomas is, just go to the show and there you have it. Okay, so Norfolk School Board yesterday voted 5-2 to hire Dr. Melinda Boone as the new superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools. She comes, of course, with some controversy because nobody comes into any office in this city without. Apparently, she was a former chief academic officer for NPS. Roger, good hire?
You know, it's a little bit too early for me to say. I haven't really gotten a chance to see some of the other people who might have been in the running. And we also haven't really gotten a good sense of, some of the other top finalists were. Mm-hmm. And I think that's unfortunate. I think it's also unfortunate we didn't have a better sense of the transparency that I was hoping was going to come to the fore in this process. One of the things in Charissa Newsom's article this morning that I thought was interesting was they got about a half of the applicants for the job that Portsmouth got for its opening several months ago. And frankly, I think she said about 36
applicants for Norfolk versus 70 for the city of Portsmouth.
So I found that a little bit surprising. You know, she does have some credentials. She does have some things that she did in Worcester that got the division to be in a better place than before she came. It might be impossible to ever be in one job or one profession for a number of years where you won't have controversy. There are different factions that aren't going to like you regardless. I saw a news article today from the Worcester paper that talked about how, some people were against her because, quite frankly, they wanted another candidate who had been in that division for a longer time. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily disqualifying. The question is, given some of the issues that have bubbled up to the surface in Norfolk over the past 5 years or so, given the concerns about performance and achievement, will she be able to bring some of those scores up, bring the performance of students up? Will the division, get back to a place where when Dr. Simpson was the superintendent, it was regularly cited as being a top performer and had gotten national awards at that time.
She was an academic advisor, academic officer.
Chief academic officer.
When the school division won the Broad Award.
Broad Award, yes.
Broad Award then, if I'm not mistaken. Bill?
That lady is not going to be any more successful than the parents who raise their children in their household. You need to follow those kids right from that schoolhouse back to their homes and see what's going on in their homes. That lady cannot be successful. That Broad Award is an award that's given to a comparison of urban schools. The city of Boston and others, Oakland school systems have won that award too, and they're worthless. And I'm just saying that we are putting our marbles in one bag. This lady is a manager, and she needs to manage her teachers. She needs to come up with a curriculum. She has a good, solid educational background. She's obviously been successful at that. Until we work the problem from the schoolhouse back to the homes and the parents are encouraging their kids to study, to do their work, get their lessons, do what they need to do, that lady will not be successful. And to put all that on her is just like setting up a forum for her to fail, because she will fail. The problem is that the kids aren't prepared. Literally, we're seeing kids that are coming to college that can't write not a coherent paragraph, a coherent sentence. They don't know geography. They don't know world activities that are going on. They don't know history. They can't write. They can't literally write. They can't think, because if you don't appreciate education in your home, and if it's not taught there and loved there and respected there, and you're going to push all this stuff into the schoolhouses, which are doing way too much in terms of what their responsibilities are. The schoolhouses are there to teach your kids how to read, write, and have arithmetic skills, and how to take some intellectual capacities and learning how to manipulate that information. They're not there to raise your kids. They're not there to police your kids, to feed your kids, to make sure they do their homework and all those other things. This is a setup for failure. I talked a very long time with Dr. King, who was there before, had long conversations with him, and he was a good man. he had a good plan. Of course, nobody else wanted to go along with it, but he wasn't allowed to operate because it's fundamental that the parents aren't raising their kids respectfully. Not enough of them are to make it happen. And so if you want to have a model of how schools should work, go in the morning to Teller Elementary School in Ghent. You know what you'll see outside the door every morning? Dozens of parents walking their kids to school and coming back and taking them. And if you go to these other schools, you don't see a parent in a PTA meeting. You don't see them anything. But let's have a whatever contest and our baseball game, our football game, they'll all be sitting up there. So I wish her luck. She's a Hampton graduate. I'm very proud of her. Anything that we can do as we offer to Dr. King, we'll be there to help and try to support her with what she does in the academic arena, in the religious and in the morals and the values and the guidance and the maturity and the way kids act in the classroom. That's on the parents. Parents, get your act together. Stop trying to put all this weight on this woman. She can't do all of that. She can't raise your kids. These are your kids.
Carol, I saw you nodding your head about the classroom.
Usually I don't agree with you, but I do, because I think that we have moved away from the model where education was a comprehensive experience. Teachers, churches, the community, the school. We are expecting it to be a one-stop shop, and it can't be that. If you have discipline problems as a teacher, I know it's hard to get. If you're correcting somebody, sit down, shut up, turn around, you can't get to the meat of talking to them about the English, the grammar, the punctuation, and all of that stuff that you need to do. And so I think she has a lot on her plate because she's coming to a community that has all of these needs, and they're expecting this to be a one-stop shop, and it can't be.
Okay. Will, what do you think?
Well, I think it's real easy to just say, well, it's the parents' responsibility. Parents, get your act together. But that doesn't move the needle to get any results. That just gets people to say, yeah, I like Bill Thomas, and I'm surprised that even Carol's just saying that. Because what they just described was not the kind of community, not the kind of system that they grew up in. They grew up in communities where the teachers were part of the community and were doing more than just giving instruction in the classroom. They were a part of your family, and they were respected that way. And so I hope this superintendent will come in and say that, no, we need to, as a community in Norfolk, to change the way that we are approaching our children, because times have changed, and we have to adapt to the changing times. And these young children are innocent and didn't come into this situation with the power to be able to make this change. We need to look at our schools and reconstruct them in a way that gets back to that kind of community approach that both Carol and Bill grew up in.
Well, Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, and of course, parents have a role to play, and of course, they have to be involved in what their students are doing. It's going to make that much more difficult. But let's be clear. Dr. Boone knows that coming in. She knows some of the challenges that are there in place.
She's not a stranger to this system.
She's not a stranger to this system or to other systems that have large amounts of poverty among the school population. So, she obviously understands some of the challenges, some of the issues that are going to confront her. And the question is, what can she do, even given some of those problems, and try to move the ball forward, try to improve the status or be a leader who helps raise the educational attainment of the students. And I think that's what the board is looking at, and I think that's what parents and the greater community are looking at as well.
You mentioned, Roger.
That's what I hope she says. I hope she says that this is a community problem. And we got to do things differently. And don't just dump it on me, sure. But we have, as a community, have to address this problem.
Go ahead, Bill.
You cannot diminish the poverty of values. You cannot diminish the poverty of non-spiritual guidance. You cannot diminish the power of poor people raising their kids with these values to want to do better, to respect authority, to respect the teachers. And for Will to say that these teachers up here in these classrooms don't do what the teachers that I used to go to school with is a falsehood. These teachers spend $100 to $200 maybe a week buying materials, buying food, giving kids money, giving them their hearts and their souls. That is just totally inaccurate. We adopted.
I didn't say that.
Wait, let me finish.
That.
We adopted a school.
Okay,
we
wait,
adopted a
one
school.
at a time.
I'm talking.
Okay.
No.
Hold on, one at a time.
The teachers,
finish your point, Bill, and then I'll come back to you,
are
Will.
just as much nurturing as caring as the ones that we had, and in some cases more. We adopted a classroom in the city of Hampton last year, where a Hampton University student was doing her first year teaching, and one in Charlotte, North Carolina. We saw what was going on. Those teachers are giving their blood, sweat, and tears. It's now stop making excuses. Parents, raise your children, get them to the school, tell them to mind their manners, and give the teachers respect, and they'll be taught something.
Will?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. You want to respond?
No, I'm just saying that what I just said was that it has to require comprehensive approach. And to just say, parents, get your act together and send your kids to school. Okay, how do we do that in these changing, different community, different time, different culture that we're experiencing here in 2010, as opposed to what Bill saw, in 1897. I mean, how do we get to this? How do we get to that?
Well,
to just say that is not moving the needle.
To make a
comprehensive approach.
I won't say anymore.
Okay,
Yeah,
Roger.
There are elements of truth of both of them are saying. One thing you said, you see the parents dropping off the kids and going to pick them back up. Sometimes the parents aren't there because they're out working or they're working two jobs. So that's one issue with that. Is there not enough involvement in PTAs? From the little bit that I've seen and actually going to some of the meetings, yeah, that's been the case with some schools. We want parents to be better involved, but we also want superintendents to set a tone and to set leadership. Some of the faults with the previous superintendent, Dr. King, was that he was not upfront about some of the issues, some of the problems that were going on with the division until it got out in the Pilot and other media. And then there was this rush to, this was a problem, such as losing the Title I money, which was, a terrible thing in a division like Norfolk. So we want that person we want the person at the top to be competent. We want that person to set a tone for better things. We want them to follow the law. Also, some of the transformation initiative that the superintendent had tried to set up, it didn't take into account some of the regulations that were supposed to be involved, opening certain schools up citywide if you're going to have these special programs there. So, hopefully some of these issues will be less of a problem with the new superintendent because she does have that background from being in Virginia. But the challenge is great, and I think we all know that challenge is going to be great in places like Norfolk, in places like Portsmouth, in places like Petersburg. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take a call from Carl in Norfolk, and then we'll move on to our next topic. Carl, you're on the air.
Thank you very much. I'm listening to you, and I'm puzzled about the whole concept. I'm a product of Booker T. Back in, as someone said, 1890.
Thank you.
Where the teachers lived in the community, where we attended the same churches, where we were disciplined on our way to and from school by neighbors, ministers, everyone. Given the fact that we are 60 years past that, we keep getting superintendents who do not understand either our culture or, because do not live in the area, do not even understand the city. We have had six, and none of them have been successful. I've heard you talk about Dr. King, who was good, Dr. Robertson, who were good, who understood the culture and who taught, not just with the book, but who taught by example and by writing. And I'll take my response off the air. Parents are important, yes, but so are students and so are teachers. They are parents in parente when the children are with them in the morning until midday.
Okay. Thank you, Carl, for your call. We appreciate that. All right. So we will see and we will monitor and see what's going on with Dr. Melinda Boone. Moving on, after serving as mayor for more than 20 years, Mayor Paul Fraim says he's not going to seek re-election. Says it's time for some younger people to step up to the plate. Was anybody surprised? Carol, were you surprised at that announcement?
I wasn't really surprised. He has been mayor for a number of years, and when you look at the demographics of the city and the changes that are going on, I'm thinking that maybe new perspective might be needed. And this, I think, is a very smart man who has access to all the information, most of which I don't have. But I do think that any leader has to know when it's time to step down and when to give to step aside for new leadership. And I think Norfolk and this area has that.
Okay. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a little surprising. I hadn't been following up that much with Norfolk politics, but I know that he had recently run. He had mentioned that he would probably run again in 2016. But I thought it was interesting looking at the pilot story that he mentioned that one of his things that he was proudest of was his efforts to try to do something about poverty, but that he was also disappointed in that he wasn't able to move the needle on that. So I'd be interested to hear more about what he faced, what his deeper thoughts are about that, the challenges that he came up against, because it ties into what we were just previously talking about, how the community has changed. There's different dynamics at play. And how in leadership do you adjust to lead a community in the reality of these different dynamics? And maybe he saw that, and maybe he made some attempts to change but kept bumping up against that kind of resistance and realized that, hey, man, it's time for me to pass the baton to someone else. So I'll be interested to hear more of what he has to say, what he's learned over this time.
Well, Roger, you're a Norfolk native. I mean, not native, but a citizen rather. And
actually, I'm a Chesapeake citizen.
I thought you lived in Norfolk.
But that's okay. But don't hate on the third largest city in the state. We do a lot of great things in Chesapeake. But
you go to church in Norfolk.
Yes, there you go. I was somewhat surprised, but I shouldn't have been, because the fact that Sheriff McCabe had announced that he was going to run, the fact that Kenny Alexander, the state senator who I talked to briefly this morning, and said that, he still hasn't made a decision totally, but he will make some type of decision after the November 3rd elections, indicated that, and he had given some suggestion that he might run if the mayor wasn't going to run, if Mayor Fraim wasn't going to run. That suggested that, yes, there might have been some indication from the mayor to people that he knew that he probably was not going to run for re-election. And State Senator Alexander, he has created a political action committee, so, fill in the dots as you will. Is the city better off than when the mayor got in? I think you'd have to say so. I think he spent time trying to buttress, in terms of economic initiatives, some things to make the city better, to improve the tax base. We now have MacArthur Center. We have other economic engines in the city. We have the rebirth of Granby Street. The problem was so much of that focus on downtown, how much did that impact other neighborhoods that were crying out for help, and that could have probably used some of the revenues that were targeted toward downtown, that maybe would have pushed them. And maybe some of that would have been in social services, maybe some of that would have been in human services. That's sometimes harder to quantify than the bricks and mortar projects that are built. I think there have been some bad moves that were made under his leadership. I don't think that the Half Moon cruise ship terminal was a good investment. I think that this is reckless, this new hotel and convention center that's being built. I think it's useless. I don't think it's going to bear fruit. I think it's a waste of money. And so much of public money has been put into this project when we have another conference center that isn't always filled up right down the block from where the new one is being built. So I I'd argue with whether some of the investments were as good. And I also think that whoever becomes mayor after Mayor Fraim, he's not going to be able to be the same type of mayor. I think, he was a bit of a transition from the old way of doing things to the new. I don't think that the new mayor will have the type of clout or the type of influence that Mayor Fraim has had, partly because of just being there for as long as he was on the council. And so it will be interesting to see the dynamics, the political dynamics that will play out in terms of who becomes the successor.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about current events with the Another View Roundtable. Roger Chesley with the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow with Norfolk State University, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. I find it interesting, since I come from Baltimore, which is a city that is run actually by the mayor as opposed to the mayor management system, council and manager system that we have here in Norfolk. So, Bill, do you the role of a mayor versus the city manager and how the city is actually run? Do you how much clout, as Roger was just talking about, do you think the new mayor might play?
I don't see that so much in Mayor Fraim. Mayor Fraim's a friend. Our children grew up together, and so he made some really, really good tries at diversifying the economy. But what I always saw him as was a leader. So I don't think the city manager, that's just an instrument of how you get stuff done. And I think he used that instrument very, very shrewdly. And so I think he had just as much power as the mayor in Baltimore had by using that instrument to do and get done what he had to get done. Mm-hmm. I think he saw in the future where Norfolk, which is probably 65% dependent upon DOD activities with the Navy base and all those kinds of things, I think he saw that as a crisis where he was trying to diversify the economy to something else, to tourism with the tour boats and the Nauticus, the Fish Museum, and all those kinds of things. They were trying to create these diversions to get the city prepared for a new way of where they had to go. The educational achievement level in the city as a whole is it's not good. The kids that do well in school, they're not here. And so I think he always saw that in perspective as trying to say, well, we can't stay DOD dependent and we got to do something different. And probably the major thing we can do is tourism related. So I think all the hotel and all these things were entrapments that were given to him were not good bets in the end of the day, because Chesapeake started building the things and Virginia Beach started building the things, and then the city of Hampton has its convention center. And that cannibalization of that business and not the unity of this Hampton Roads region has probably been the biggest thing in the world. But from the mayor's standpoint, I thought he always thought regionally as best he could. Like he worked with us on trying to say, which is the best way of fixing transportation? Should we do the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel or the third crossing and things like that? He was always reaching out, trying to seek solutions in a very, very difficult, chaotic community that he was working within in the region.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic because we've got a bunch of things to talk about today. So yesterday there was supposed to be a vote among the Republican Party for the candidate for Speaker of the House. Everybody thought it was going to be Kevin McCarthy, but just before the vote, he said, I'm out. Okay, so the vote was postponed, even though there are two other candidates. Now there was a big push to make Paul Ryan the candidate, and this just in, Paul Ryan now says that he is considering. For breaking news from CNN, he says he is now considering running for Speaker of the House. Will, what is going on in Congress?
So somebody must be writing a whole lot of checks behind the scenes. Somebody wrote a check and said, McCarthy, we don't want you in there, go away. And somebody said to Paul Ryan, look, man, we need you. Here's a check. You need to do something. You need to consider it. And it just shows that politics is a lot like making sausage. You don't want to see it done. And there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And, the Republicans are, there's no secret that the Republican Party is in disarray. Boehner has pretty much said it himself and talked about the difficulties of being the speaker and talked about people making promises they know they're just not realistic. So whoever sits in that seat has got a mess to try to clean up.
Well, are they going to build? I mean, are we going to ever get past this hard right, this Tea Party group? I mean, they seem to be saying, do it our way or else, or it's the highway. I mean,
actually, I can say with pride, I would be pleased to be a part of the Tea Party group. I think the way the country's going now and our loss of value, not focused on President Obama. He did the best he could with what he had, but Boehner is not doing anything. Nobody is really looking at the country. And I would hope to think that Congressman Ryan would see that if he doesn't step in and provide the leadership, then what good is he going to be as a congressman?
But is he going to be able to be the one to bring consensus?
No, absolutely not. Well, and he shouldn't bring consensus to chaos. We are $22 trillion in debt. We owe more money to Russia and China than we have in the banks and the vaults of our Federal Reserve System. We are being threatened on every inch of the earth on things that we've already had. I'm not blaming anybody, but our kids, this is the most important thing, our children who are even graduating from college today can't find a job. I mean, it's just, we are here. You got Uber. Is it Uber, the cab company?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have cab companies now that don't own automobiles or cabs. Mm-hmm. Well, you have big shopping centers in the sky that you go to on the internet that don't employ people, don't create managers and auditors and advertising and things because it's all gone. We have to figure out a way is where America is going to go. And the route we're on now, with more socialization, which we cannot afford, with all this nourishing thing that some of my friends on this very station want to continue to do, and not saying that sometimes a kick in the pants and a point in the right direction is a very good thing to do. I mean, we can't keep going, in my judgment, the way we're going now. And lastly, in terms of all these Republican candidates out there, the reason I'm not going to support any of them because I don't think they're doing anything. So I'm supporting anybody but them. And if that's Trump, that's it. Because they're not doing anything that's going to improve the value of life, lower taxes. Our taxes are too high for the working class. It's just too high for the people in the middle income people. They're the people that are getting hurt. So I think, no, I would agree with what the Republicans are doing. I think they ought to stand there and get some values and stand there. Even if you lose, then lose.
But Carol, at this point, if Paul Ryan gets in, if he can't bring consensus, we've got things coming up. You know, the November the 5th, the borrowing. They've got to decide. The Treasury Department is going to run out of the authority to borrow money. We've got to decide on the debt ceiling. They've got to decide on whether or not to keep the government running again in December. I mean, there's some big issues that are coming up, and Congress is in chaos right now. What do we do about it?
And I'm not a member of the party, but from an outsider perspective, it looks like the party itself hasn't decided what direction they're going to go, and they have not solidified their position on these issues. Now, we all can identify the problems, but what exactly is going to be done? When you look at Boehner, there was a lot of adverse opinions about him. They said, well, he was, excuse the expression, a crybaby. He was. And that he was so busy, I feel your pain, that he wasn't getting the collective together to address the issue specifically. He was not saying, okay, guys, this is what we're going to have to do. He didn't have a vision. He didn't have a strategy. When you look at who takes his place, you have to look at somebody who has identified the problem, identified a strategy, and identified tactics to approach those problems. And right now, the party's going so many different directions, it's hard to identify.
Well, did he not have a strategy, Roger, or was it not the Tea Party strategy, therefore they weren't going to go along with it?
Well, he obviously had different factions they had to deal with. And the thing that I've been struck most about this, the differences amongst the Republican Party in Congress, or at least in the House especially, they're the majority. And usually when you're the majority, you're supposed to worry about governing. It's usually the minority party that's the insurgent. Well, you're the majority, so, you can put away some of the rhetoric that you had when you were in the minority and try to govern, try to get your agenda through. You say that we're spending too much. Okay, so what are you going to tell the American people about the things that are most taking up most of that cost, which are Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, defense? Okay, if you want to cut that, let's be real with the American people. Tell them this is what we've got to do to deal with some of these deficits. This is what we have to do to deal with some of this debt. And I don't see that level of honesty that if that is your main point, If you think this is the overarching thing that needs to be solved, then be straight with the American people about this is what life is going to look like if we do that, especially if we do that in a quick, very fast way. I'm going to be surprised what Paul Ryan will be able to accomplish or whomever it gets into that job, because you obviously have different you do have a very much a debate going on in the Republican Party about what that party wants to be. And I think you have Democrats smartly sitting on the sidelines and saying, y'all go ahead and fight amongst yourselves, and we'll see what we can do on the other end of all this.
Well, meanwhile, while all this is going on, Rupert Murdoch is speaking about Ben Carson, who is running on the Republican ticket, and he's saying, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a real black president? What do you think about that? He could solve that. Ben Carson could solve the racial divide.
Yeah, I think, and looking at that, I don't know if he was saying, it's unclear what exactly Rupert Murdoch really meant by any of that. And when you listen to some of the things that Ben Carson is saying, there's a lot of unclarity about what does he really want and what is he really doing. And I just wonder sometimes when I see these people saying some of the things that they say, and with the kind of resources that they have, I wonder a lot of times what is really their motive. I mean, once you have all the kind of money that you need to really sustain yourself, at some point, what is it that really keeps you interested? Is it power? What is your motive? What is the thought process behind even running for president, behind even saying some of the things that they're saying? And to Roger's point about honesty, the reason why the politicians are not honest is because they know that that's not what's going to keep them elected. Mm-hmm. To really be honest with the people and say, this is why I'm raising your taxes, or this is what it's going to take if you want the government spending to be cut. And here's the pain that you're going to have to take, American people. They know that the folks, American people, are going to vote them out of office. And so this is why they choose not to be honest. This is why they choose not to come straight and say those things, because at the primary level is where they are most at risk of a small group of voters getting them out of office. And that's where the rhetoric is the highest, where people make emotional votes.
Well,
as sad as that sounds, that is how the system is. And you all know that.
Well,
Bill certainly knows that.
Well, I understand that, but that level of, I just wish there were fewer cowards that were running for national office.
Well,
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
But here's a fallacy that Roger is bringing up in stark reality. We talk about health care insurance. There is no such thing as health care insurance. There's no such thing.
What do you mean?
If all of us in this room, the other room over there, got together and said, we're going to buy fire insurance for our house, we would all kick in a pool, and we would go on the probability that all of our houses aren't going to burn down, mm-hmm. only one. And then from that pure and simple mathematics, we could come up with a price for that insurance to insure all our houses. With health insurance, you can't do that. Everybody is going to need health insurance, 100% of us, and especially older people. I had a germ get into my body, and Lord knows the amount of money that cost. It cost that bill, my hospital bills are more than I have paid in insurance for my lifetime. In my lifetime. So you can't, so politicians can't be truthful, because you can't have, there's no such thing as health insurance. It's an entitlement. I just looked at my Social Security. I just turned 61 or 2, and the Social Security sent me out this number.
61 or 2?
You mean there?
You trying to decide?
I'm vain. There may be somebody out there, 38, 39, and I can say, at least, here's where I am. So we're going to keep it. I'm a woman in that sense. I'm going to keep my age to my own privacy.
Work with him, Roger. Work with him.
My point is,
work with him.
All right, hurry up, because I want to get to the Million Man March. Come on.
My whole point is that nobody wants to be truthful. I saw what I'm going to get when I get my Social Security. It's a good number. Mm-hmm. It's a very good number. And actually, I could walk away in 3 years and say I could live on that very good, very good. Plus, I got private sector insurance. Mm-hmm. I don't need it.
You don't
I
need
really
your
don't
Social
need
Security.
it. No, I don't. I mean, it could be going to the good of the commonwealth of the common people of America. If we don't start making those hard decisions, now with my Social Security, I can keep my cell phone, I can keep my TV, I can keep my boat, I can keep everything and just use that to pay for it. But just to live on and to be comfortable in a house, I don't need all of that. But I'm saying that the politicians
sounds like a socialist. That
no,
sounds
I'm not.
like socialism.
No. I'm sounding like an American. I have resources, and I sounded like how I was raised. Help other people. If I can help somebody along the way, and now I can. I just need some leadership to tell me how can I do that and not be reckless about it. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's just that what's more important? Is it more important for you to get reelected, or is it more important to say, hey, we've got some major problems in the country, and to solve them, we all have to make sacrifices. And I think there are too many people who are doing the former and not the latter. And that's very disappointing to me as an American to say, look, if you believe that we need to have low taxes is more important than anything else, then be straight with the American people and tell them the main drivers of our national debt are Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And a lot of people like those things.
Absolutely.
And so if that's important to you, then you need to speak up as Americans. But if you're in Congress, you have to be truthful with the American people and say, yeah, we can give you low taxes, but we're going to have to cut a lot of these other programs that you seem to like so much.
Okay, then I'm going to move on to our last topic because I don't want to run out of time. 20 years ago, Louis Farrakhan said this in D.C.
Black man, you don't have to bash white people. All we got to do is go back home and turn our communities into productive places. All we got to do is go back home and make our communities a decent and safe place to live. And if we start dotting the black community with businesses, opening up factories, challenging ourselves to be better than we are, white folk, instead of driving by using the N-word, they'll say, look at them. Oh my God. They're marvelous. They're wonderful. We can't say they're inferior anymore. But every time we drive by shoot, every time we carjack, produce culturally degenerate films and tapes, putting a string in our women's backside and parading them before the world, every time we do things like this, we are feeding the degenerate mind of white supremacy. And I want us to stop feeding that mind and let that mind die a natural death.
So, you know what I was surprised at? And this is, I'm going to tell you guys, I stereotyped this time because I assumed that Roger and Wil went to the march and you didn't, Bill. And it turned out you and your son went to the march.
Absolutely.
And Roger and Wil did not.
No, I did not.
And so, let me find out, first of all, why you, Roger, and you, Wil, did not go.
It was a very painful time for me personally. I was on strike. I had just started. I was out of work at a paper in Detroit. And if I hadn't been on strike, I would have probably covered that march. And my own son was very young at the time. He was only 5. So it wouldn't have been, living in Detroit, it probably wasn't something that I would have done if I hadn't been covering it.
Got you. Okay. And Wil?
Yeah, I was actually working for the Arizona Republic at the time. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, so I was in newspapers and working, and that distance and working and doing what Farrakhan would say, taking care of your family, made it so I wasn't able to make that trip. And so one of the other things he said was, you know, for those men who could not make it, that they should, you know, stay home with their families and their children, watch the march. So I ended up watching it home with my 2-year-old son at the time. My oldest one was in school, but my 2-year-old Josh was home with me, and we ended up watching it.
Okay. Bill,
he was 2 or 3 at the time.
Yeah. What was it like out there? I mean, because what he said made a lot of sense in terms of what you've been talking about in terms of
I agree with 100%. I
self-preservation.
I thought I had a 12-year-old at the time, and I wanted to make sure he saw that. And I thought it was a moving experience for him. And actually, I covered it as I was on the radio at the time with WNIS. So not only did I go there, I covered it and convinced Mr. Sinclair to pay for us that to happen, and they broadcasted it on live at WNIS at the time.
Wow, that's interesting.
So I was just really, really taken aback because it's just in the words what he said. There was nobody robbing anybody. Everybody was trying to be kind. There were people at the bus station and at the train station that didn't have money to get back, and people got together and gave them money. We wouldn't buy the ticket. No, we're not going to give you the money in hand, but we'll go get the bus ticket. Go get the bus ticket. And I mean, it was just a common occurrence. There were people there that we were eating and we were okay. There were some that didn't. We shared our food. There's a discussion. I'm just so disappointed that what he just said is what I have been saying for the last 30 years. And what we talked about at the time, well, what can the black middle class do to help their own communities? We didn't go back. I really feel.
I was going to say, what's the difference? What happened?
I feel so bad about not going back. It hurts me because in the communities, if we were there, we don't have to be, but it's just the fact that we didn't sustain our culture and our heritage. And my father and my grandfather would be very, very disappointed in me now, even though we did do a lot of good things, but they always wanted us to go back. Come back home, come back to the land, come back to the families, come back to the church. We just gave it away, and we just still it's really disheartening for me. Maybe I ought to write something about it, get with Roger to talk about it or something. But I'm just saying it's really disappointing because I think it's just that simple. I think the solution is that simple. Just not to be keeping along with this. I think if parents told their kids every day they woke up, I love you, go to school and do well, and get your lessons when you come home. Even if I got to go to work, I can't be there, I got to go to a job, but I still love you very much. I want you to be a good, strong woman or man growing up, and I just love you. Go do that. I think if we just did that and not find an excuse for it, not finding an excuse for people to see us in the way we are, but the way we should be. So I agree. I'm going to get that tape. Send me that tape so I can hear it again. But I think it's just that simple. I think if we told our kids we loved them, if we took care of our own communities, if we did what we had to do, they would also respect us. So
the march tomorrow, in commemoration 20 years, is tomorrow. The theme this time is justice or else. Some people say that it's more focused on the government and on institutional ways of helping the community this time, as opposed to self. It should be more on the government. What do you think about that, Roger?
I still think, I don't have a problem with that, but I do think a lot of our future is tied up in what we do for ourselves. Now, I think the government has its role to play, and I don't think it can turn its back on a race of people. Especially given the places that we've been through and some of the things that have happened to us as a people in our time in this country. But I do think it's very important to be, what is going on in your own lives? What are those things that you control that you can make better? What are those deficiencies of within yourselves, within your families, within your churches, within your communities that you can do something about? Because we've often, as a people, we've often been treated badly, but it seems like some of the issues that we're dealing with now seem to be almost of a catastrophic nature. And I dare say that we were possibly better off in 1995, especially on the job outlook, than we are now. Yeah, we were in prisons, our men, so much in prisons then, same case now. We've been homicide victims. We're doing badly now and I have some statistics on that. We're about half the number of homicide victims in any given year, even though we're only about 13.5% of the population. So, I think there should continue to be a focus on what can we do among ourselves to make our own situations better.
Okay.
Not to let the government off the hook, but
still keep our own personal. Will, you got the last word. We got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So
Okay.
I'll give it back to you.
We had 3 minutes. Well, I think Roger's right. I think we need to have a reconciliation, a revival. I'll never forget, and even my boss at the time at WNS was Tony McCreaney. They understood the importance of this, and he stood and got my back, and we did that. And that's all we need to do. All this arguing, and Will and I are discussing points of contention because we need to do that too. We need to have that discussion. But I said at the same time, we got to fix our own community. I would say that, and I'm not being prejudiced or anything. I had a meeting with some group of students this morning. I think if the government and white people left us alone for a year, government has responsibility. The whole community has a part in this. But if white folks stopped and just left us alone, because they're the ones who passed all these laws back 50 years ago. There were no black people in Congress or Senate. So I think, in a general sense, if we were allowed to work our way out of this, we'd be okay.
You got a minute and a half now. Go ahead. I know.
Here's what I mean. That's not going to happen.
Go ahead.
That's not going to happen. If we need to, let's talk about solutions that are likely to happen. We have people in academia. You have people in the community who are activists, who are actively all over the community that are working on things, that are doing things, that are making a difference. Talk about things that are likely to happen and get done and develop businesses. Stop talking about things like, if people just leave us alone or just let the parents pick them up. If your parent is dysfunctional, and Barbara, you deal with parents like these in your nonprofit work that don't know how to parent children, and they need to be taught how because they come from a legacy of dysfunction. So to just say, parent, turn around and feed your kid, come on.
All right,
Let's do the programs
we got 30 seconds, Roger. Last
Real
30
quick,
seconds.
we have a major election coming up on November 3rd. Voting is one of the ways to impact that. If you are not registered to vote, Tuesday is the deadline to get registered to do that.
Absolutely.
That's a start.
And with that roundtable, thank you so very much.
Thank
you
you,
guys
Barbara.
are always
So
fabulous,
nice
as
to be here.
always. So thank you for joining us. And you know what? Another View, the Virginia Wesleyan Center for the Study of Religious Freedom, and the Fort Monroe Authority are all partners in our Race Let's Talk About It initiative. Our next topic is privilege, power, and difference. We'll start the conversation on Another View on Friday, September the 6th, and then we'll take the conversation into the community with our next town hall, which will be Friday, November 6th. And then we'll take the conversation into the community with our next town hall, which will be Thursday, November the 19th, here at WHRO. Seating is limited, so you must go to whro.org/talkaboutrace and register. It's free and it's open to everyone, but you must register to attend. That's whro.org/talkaboutrace to register. And guess what? You can now watch archive editions of our Another View radio show on YouTube. Go to WHRO TV on YouTube, then to the playlist and look for Another View radio show. Check it out so you can see how handsome Bill is. Next week, African American veterans and unemployment. Lisa Godley hosts as part of our Veterans Coming Home initiative. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer. And I think it's Kamaria Mason back there answered our phones. That was Jessica Jane. I'm sorry. I'm Barbara Hamley. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.